All right, so you can see that I'm now in Pixlr. I have my Abraham Lincoln image open. And the first thing I'm going to want to do is erase some of the background so that I can pull out the Lincoln from this gray background. And then I'm going to add him into another image. For instance, I'll put him in a scene from Disneyland. The first thing I need to do is change it so that Lincoln is no longer on this background layer. To do that, I'm going to double click on the lock so it's unlocked. Now I can manipulate it. And if I toggle this checkbox, I can make Lincoln appear or disappear. So because I want to make sure I have a safe copy for in case I make any mistakes, I'm going to right click on my layer and duplicate the layer. And now I have two layers of Lincoln. Notice I can select either one and that layer will be blue. So for instance, if I'm selecting the bottom layer and start using my erase tool, nothing's appearing. That's because my top layer is visible. Once I make that top layer invisible, you'll notice that even though I couldn't see it, I was actually erasing a part of that. I'm going to undo that by going Control Z. That's the way I undo it anytime. And I'm going to uncheck both for a moment just to show you that this is what it looks like when there's transparency. You'll see these checkered white and gray boxes. And what we want to do is erase some of what's behind Lincoln to make it to make his edges transparent. So right now I'm using a brush. It's a large brush. It's got a width of 200 pixels and it's got a hard edge. And you can notice that as I erase, it's very clear what I'm erasing. And if I were to make a mistake, I can always press Control Z and it'll undo anything I've done since I last lifted the mouse. The other option I have is to have a feathered edge. And I'll show you what this looks like. The feathered edge is actually going to be pretty helpful, especially if I'm doing a quick mock-up. If I'm doing a quick mock-up, I can just go like this. Pretty quickly, I'm getting Lincoln cut out. But you'll notice that around here, there's still remnants. It's going to be much harder to blend this than to blend something that's cut with a much finer edge. So I'm going to go back to hard edge for my main demonstration. And I'm going to get all the big areas, all the big bulky areas. And then in a moment, I will switch to a smaller brush. So maybe I'll go with a 30. And with the 30, I can really get in here and get some more of these details. If at any point I want to get a closer look, I can use the zoom tool to really zoom in on exactly the parts that I'm wanting to get. So I'm going back to my eraser now. And I can start getting a more and more refined edge for Lincoln. Once I get to about the 30 range, once I get this close, now is an okay time for me to switch to the feather tool. And it's much less noticeable that I'm using this tool, but you can see that my edges it's getting closer and closer to Lincoln's suit as I go. And there's just a little bit of a ghost or a remnant of the edge, but that should be fine as I go into blending. Alright, so that is the method of using the eraser tool to get ready to select an image. So the next step, I'm going to just zoom out to show you all of this. Next step, I need to press my Shift key to turn my magnifying glass from a positive to a negative, and that'll allow me to zoom out. So I'm going to just quickly erase the rest of these edges. You see, mistakes are pretty common in this. Luckily, there's Control Z to undo, which is something you don't have the luxury of when you're working in physical materials. So I'm going to go back to 200, and I'm just going to get rid of some of these big edges for the purposes of our next step.